Yo,
This
yo,
meeting is
yo,
being recorded.
yo, football fans, Big D in the house with a little question and answer football segment on the Big D podcast. Before I bring in Alex, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. We can see all content uploaded a video yesterday. Also, starting next week, Alex and I will go through each division, give our picks for who's going to win, who's going to shine for fantasy, and unfortunately, who's going to snooze. So check out the Big D podcast on Spotify and Apple. So back from annoying us this past weekend with 5 to 8 inches of rain and some 20 or 30 mile an hour winds, it's Hurricane Alex.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Dylan. It's glad to be back. I had a busy weekend. Kind of traveling up the Caribbean, up to the state of Florida, wrecking some havoc. But I'm settled down now. I think bringing some sunshine and some good energy. So it's nice to be back on the show. It's nice to be talking some NFL. So I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I sort of knew when that storm was coming to Florida. I'm like, it's either going to hit you or it's going to hit me.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, growing up on the East Coast and then moving down to Southwest Florida. I mean, I'm going to know someone who's going to be getting hit by either a tropical storm or a hurricane. It's either going to be where I am or where my friends are. So, we got some rain up here and then some wind. It was definitely a wet weekend, but overall it was nothing too crazy. Nothing, no shutters on windows or anything like that.
Yeah, no 19 inches of rain either.
All right.
Like some models predicted, but we'll save that for hurricane season. So, Alex, this new football season is coming around the corner, and my first question to you is, what team has improved the most from last season?
All right. There's definitely a couple different routes. I'm just going to do a quick shout out because I have to. The Miami Dolphins are an honorable mention. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them because I always do. But the addition of Tyreek Hill, we got some speed in the running back room, a young offensive guru at head coach to come in and really take Tua's talents to the next level with some defensive upgrades as well. Miami Dolphins are definitely in the conversation, but I will save my bias for another time. I'm definitely going to go with, I think the Cincinnati Bengals made some really good moves this offseason. I mean, you got to think as a Super Bowl contender, not even contender, but playing in the Super Bowl, it's kind of hard to really go up from there. But they were in on the Armstead race when it came to upgrading their offensive line. I mean, the entire talk before the 2021 draft, not the 2022 draft, but the 2021 draft, was the Cincinnati Bengals were going to give Joe Burrow, his guy, Jamar Chase from LSU, or if they were going to address that offensive line and kind of solidify and protect their quarterback, which everyone kind of seemed like, it was a toss up for a while there. And I know I was on the you got to protect your quarterback train, but obviously the Cincinnati Bengals took Jamar Chase last year, and it definitely paid off in a very significant way. But this year, it was finally time. They had that stud receiver. They've got T. Higgins. They've got a lot of Joe Mixon, a lot of offensive weapons. And they really addressed the offensive line group this offseason, especially with the big signing, La'el Collins. And I think that one signing alone, protecting Joe Burrow's blind side, giving him a foundation on the offensive line that they can really build around, is going to do. I mean, it's crazy that we're talking about a team who improved the most, and I bring up a team that was in the Super Bowl last season. But I mean, we know how important offensive line is to especially Super Bowl contending teams. I mean, we saw it in the Chiefs Tampa Bay Super Bowl. We saw it in the last Super Bowl. You cannot win a Super Bowl without a strong offensive line. And the Cincinnati Bengals shocked everyone by getting to the Super Bowl last year with a subpar to average offensive line, and then you bring in one of the best outside linemen in the NFL, especially from that talented Dallas Cowboys offensive line and La'el Collins. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are in it to win it again this year.
I think you've got the right conference, but you got the wrong team. Let's see. Who were the Denver Broncos quarterbacks last year? Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock.
Yep.
And they added a guy who's won a Super Bowl and will be enshrined in canon one day. Some guy you may have heard of. I can't remember his name.
Let Russ cook?
You mean let Russ eat? Russell.
Either way. Yep. Oh, he's just taking a drink. He's like, that's my take. My take.
No, I mean, when you go from Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock to Russell Wilson, you're already better. But that wasn't it. The Broncos also added Randy Gregory, a great pass rusher if he can keep his head on straight, a versatile defensive lineman, together with two very good two-headed backfield. I really like Williams, the young running back from North Carolina. I think Melvin Gordon, whether you like him or not, will probably score like 10, 12 touchdowns and just handcuff the crap out of everybody. But here's what I think the Denver Broncos could be as good, if not better, potentially, in the last few Seahawks teams. They've not only got two good receivers, you could argue they've got three good receivers with Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, KJ Hamler. I mean, the Broncos have stacked a wide receiver, and I think Denver's got a really good secondary, because not only are they great on the back end with Justin Simmons, but they drafted the Alabama corner Patrick Surtain Jr. last year. So Denver's really good at secondary, good pass rushers. If Bradley Chubb stays healthy, good on the corner, wide receiver, great left tackle in Garrett Bowles, and a Hall of Fame quarterback. Plus, I think it's about time Russell Wilson got an offensive play caller in the Daniel Hackett.
Yeah, you made great points there. I think obviously Melvin Gordon is a great asset for the Denver Broncos as a running back and part of their running back room fantasy football players. However, Melvin Gordon is probably going to be the biggest pain in the you-know-what, because I think Javonte Williams has everything to be a workhorse back, to be that guy in fantasy football. But that Melvin Gordon, man, him taking touches, you're right. I mean, he's going to score touchdowns this season. He's probably going to be the goal line back. He's going to take a lot of production away from Javonte Williams. I think it's going to work great for the Denver Broncos. I think having two running backs of that caliber is going to be a great asset for them going forward, especially on the offensive side of the football. But man, for fantasy football, I mean, they were talking about Melvin Gordon thinking about moving on to a different team and them re-signing him. I know a lot of Javonte Williams truthers who were not too happy about that news, but no, I definitely agree. I mean, obviously Russell Wilson, like you said, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, it's going from Drew Lock / Teddy Bridgewater to a Hall of Fame quarterback is going to make any any football team better. But I think you've got good takes there. I think also the LA Chargers deserve a shout too, because I mean, being able to bring in a guy like Khalil Mack, it's just we know what the Chargers can do on offense with Justin Herbert and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and oh my God,
Mike Williams,
Austin Eckler, but bringing in an absolute unit on the defensive side of the ball is going to be really big for that Chargers team too. So I think that they deserve a shout out as well. But let's move on. There's if that's okay with you, Dylan. There's always winners of an offseason. There's always teams that make some big improvements going to the offseason, but there's always got to be teams that make a regression. So I want to hear a team that you think has kind of flipped the script and is going in the wrong direction going into the 2022 season.
Talk about a strange offseason, but you could argue the New England Patriots offseason was one of the strangest I have ever seen. Let's see.
Yep.
J.C. Jackson's this young cornerback making plays all over the field last year. And what happened? The Patriots let him go and Chargers picked him up.
Yep.
And you look at, and New England traded for Devontae Parker, but yet the Patriots needed speed. You know this because you've seen Devontae Parker play in Miami. Is he going to win the 4x100 and the 100-meter dash?
He sure isn't. He's going to win a jump ball, but he's not going to be running by people.
And plus, with New England, that's a complicated scheme. You've got Jacoby Myers. You've got some guys. Not all of New England's free agent additions worked well last year. Plus, New England Patriots draft was one of the strangest I have ever seen. And not just because the first guy they chose.
Right.
That being Cole Strange, the offensive lineman from Tennessee, Chattanooga. I never heard of this guy before the draft. Never heard
of
a
second and third round grade.
Or fourth round grade.
Or fourth, yeah.
And drafted him with the 29th overall pick when you could have gotten him on day 2 or day 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in the second round, New England drafted Tyquan Thornton, the wide receiver from Baylor, who lit up the combine running, a sub-4.3 in the underwear Olympics. But New England's history of drafting wide receivers is probably worse than Manchester United signing managers and midfielders since Sir Alex Ferguson retired.
You really had to go there, didn't you, Dylan?
That's all I could. Hey, I've got to dig at you once in a while.
That's fair. That's understandable.
I mean, New England's plus, now I'm hearing all these rumors that Matt Patricia, yes, the Matt Patricia is going to be the offensive coordinator in Foxborough this season. What?
Yeah, I have to go and cross the New England Patriots off of my list to talk about for this segment. But yeah, Matt Patricia is not the guy to be calling off. It's the Patriots are a mess. I mean, it makes me feel all sorts of joy and happiness to be able to talk about it. But first of all, Mac Jones is not as good as he's not very good at all at this moment in time. I mean, you can talk about the future and his development and all of that, and the Bill Belichick to be able to turn into a quarterback. I'm not worried about that. I'm saying right now, Mac Jones is not a very good quarterback. He's one of the most overrated players in the NFL last season. They went on that big win streak, and I think people forgot about how Mac Jones was playing football and about how, to be able to win a football game with one completed pass is something by itself. But, I think the offseason moves that they made, the players they lost, obviously you mentioned J.C. Jackson is a big one, but I'm taking your team again. Apparently, I'm just going to go with it, but I will switch it up actually. And it's the team that we were just talking about as well, the Seattle Seahawks. You obviously, Russell Wilson has been talking about a move, or rumblings, rumors have been talking about a move, about him leaving Seattle for a couple seasons now. It's been kind of brought up in the hush hush of the NFL offseason. Finally happens, and the Seattle Seahawks seem like they had no plan for it. To be able to bring in Drew Lock, is Drew Lock the worst quarterback in the NFL? I would say no. Is he bottom tier quarterback in the NFL? I would say yes. And the fact that they didn't look, obviously the Deshaun Watson situation was kind of a mess, and I don't blame teams for wanting to stay away from that, which it seems like the Browns are learning why they maybe shouldn't have gone to that sweepstakes. But Drew Lock is not the answer in Seattle. Obviously, DK Metcalf, they're going to have to, if they want to keep him, which they really should because he's the best player on their team, they're going to have to give him the bag coming up very shortly. So you're going to give all this money to DK Metcalf. You have Drew Lock as your starting quarterback. You really don't have the salary cap to be able to bring in an Aaron Rodgers type superstar or something like that. What is the Seattle Seahawks plan going forward? Pete Carroll's a great head coach. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's been able to keep that Seattle Seahawks franchise afloat. But not afloat. I mean, they've been one of the better programs in the NFL over the last decade. But it seems like the time had finally come for Russell Wilson to move on, and it just seems like the Seattle Seahawks had no plan on what to do after that. So, I definitely agree with you on the Patriots. I think they really regressed this offseason, but the Seattle Seahawks, I don't see them contending for anything for quite a bit of time.
Except the number 1 pick.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Alex, which injured player making his return this year will have a big impact on the 2022 season?
I mean, there's one very, very obvious answer that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about. Derrick Henry obviously is the guy, is the answer for this question, but everyone knows what Derrick Henry is, who he is, what he can provide for a team. So I'm going to stick with the same position, but go with a slightly different direction. I think J.K. Dobbins could be in line for a big season. The Baltimore Ravens had a extremely disappointing season last year, finishing 8-9. I mean, in that division, the Steelers, Big Ben was on his last legs. The Browns were really average. And then obviously, the Bengals were a Super Bowl team, but I mean, the Ravens went into the last season expecting to win that division and planning on winning that division. And things obviously didn't quite go their way. Lamar Jackson was banged up a little bit. He wasn't having the best season, but losing J.K. Dobbins was definitely a big loss for them. The man is a very talented running back. And I think him coming back and hopefully being able to have a full season, staying healthy, J.K. Dobbins could definitely be in line to really help the Baltimore Ravens compete with the new clear-cut leaders of that division, the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely regressing. The Browns, who knows what's going to happen with this Deshaun Watson situation. But the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, they went through a running back carousel last season. And to be able to have J.K. Dobbins healthy coming up in this season is going to be huge for them. And for the opportunity of knocking off the Cincinnati Bengals for that AFC North title.
Interesting, because it seemed like Baltimore went through more running backs in 1 year than college teams go through in 5 years.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
Not good at all.
You've got one guy
jumping out.
You've got one guy coming off the torn Achilles. How about Mr. Cam Akers?
Good one.
Because if you look at it, Cam Akers tore his Achilles late July, early August last year, came back playing the Super Bowl. He played in the playoffs.
Yeah.
How do you come back off a torn Achilles and play in the postseason?
Ankles of steel, maybe?
Modern medicine.
Modern medicine? I guess you're right about that.
I mean, but the fact he came back, obviously missed basically the whole regular season, but we know how good LA's offense is with Stafford, with Cooper Kupp, with Allen Robinson, Higbee, potentially Odell Beckham, Van Jefferson. But in Sean McVay's offense, a good running game can make anything better. Because guess what? Even though everybody says he wants to throw the ball, guess what? I'm just saying, it helps to have a good running game, right? Because that means Stafford's not ending up on his you-know-what. The defense isn't on the field. It's everybody's Fletcher. And you know what? The offensive linemen love because they don't have to defend Nick Bosa or some of those top guys. You imagine if your running game's poop and all of a sudden you get Khalil Mack on one side and Joey Bosa on the other all afternoon. Yikes. Cam Akers makes the LA Rams different. Because think back to 2020 when Cam Akers, you could argue, may have been the best running back outside Leonard Fournette in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I think Cam Akers is definitely a good shout. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the Cincinnati Bengals. We haven't talked much about the Rams in this show. I mean, you got to think. I mean, with that, the LA Rams we know is a stacked team. I mean, Aaron Donald just got a massive extension. They're the Super Bowl reigning team, champion. I mean, it's an easy team to bet on going into the 2022 season. But the one question mark that you really see from that offense is that running game. Because Cam Akers, we know he has a talent. I mean, he was a ridiculous talent when he was at FSU in college. He was really highly touted coming in the NFL. Had some injury problems. You know, it was a little bit of a congested running back room there a little bit. There was no one really taking that step forward until that playoffs when he really showed that he could be the guy to lead the LA Rams in that running back room. But I definitely think that, like you said, I mean, Matt Stafford, you know what they have in Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, Allen Robinson coming in. But that running game, it's imperative to be able to keep defenses honest. I mean, and I think Cam Akers is definitely, he's got the talent to be able to do it. He's got, you know, the football knowledge. He's got the football IQ. He's got all of the ability in the world. It's just with these, I mean, it's something we talk about with running backs every year. If you're useless if you're not on the field. So availability is your best ability. And Cam Akers has to be able to make sure that he's on the field for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 games this season. Because we know the LA Rams, I mean, they're in it to win it again. We're expecting a playoff run. We're expecting a Super Bowl contending team from them. And without a run game, that's not going to happen. But let's move on. We've talked about some winners of the offseason. We've talked about some losers of the offseason. We talked about some injured players making returns. I want to talk about a head coaches. You know, it's the engine of these teams. It's what brings everything together. And some teams are in better positions than others, as we've already said. I want to hear about a head coach that he's really got to be on his A game this year because his seat might be getting a little bit warm.
Frank Reich.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich. All right.
I can't believe I'm calling Frank Reich on the hot seat, but to be honest, I don't think Mr. Irsay like the end of the Indianapolis Colts season where you could argue Indy gave away a playoff spot with two pitiful games, one against the Las Vegas Raiders and one against in a city where they cannot win, apparently.
No.
That being Jacksonville, Florida.
Yep. A team you know very well.
Yeah. And while people want to blame Reich for what happened to Carson Wentz, I think Carson Wentz actually played really well last year. Indianapolis's problem was the offensive line degraded. You could argue Quentin Nelson dealt with injuries allowed the Eric Fisher look like a shell of himself, and Indianapolis's offensive line just all of a sudden went from the best in the league to Lord knows who was playing every single week.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have a – yep.
And this year, the Colts sent Carson Wentz back and added Matt Ryan. And while Matt Ryan's probably past his prime, I still think he's got some football left. I am intrigued by what the Colts have. Obviously, we know Jonathan Taylor's probably the best running back in football. We know what Michael Pittman Jr. can do. We know what some of these guys can do. Hopefully, the Colts stay healthy this year because I think the AFC South is wide open, particularly with Tennessee losing A.J. Brown, the Texans. Lord knows what's going to happen with Davis Mills, and Lord knows what's going to happen with Jacksonville. Now that Urban, I'm not going to say his last name's out of there, but if the Indianapolis Colts do not win this year, Frank Reich will be fired. 100%.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I mean, like you're saying, with an offense or with a running back in Jonathan Taylor that you have, who's clearly, I mean, he was the number one fantasy football running back last season. I think he's we'll get into some fantasy football running back stuff in a second. But you can't have a regression on the offensive line. I've been a big Matt Ryan fan throughout his entire career. I always had a strange affinity towards Boston College. So obviously with him coming out of the NFL from there, never really had any problems with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they're an NFC team. So I've always just been a Matt Ryan fan. However, Matt Ryan's been in the league for quite a long time. I mean, I feel like this is a good situation for him with what you would like to think is a solid offensive line, a great running game, a pretty solid to decent defense to support you on the other side. Now, again, does Frank Reich have what it takes to ensure that team's a winning football team? But I'm not 100% sold on Matt Ryan going into this season. I think, like you said, I think he is a little bit past his prime, but he is in a situation. I mean, he's got some talent at the receiver position. Michael Pittman is a budding star. So I think he's in a good situation, but I want to switch over to a head coach who is in a similar situation as Frank Reich in Indianapolis. You're bringing in a new quarterback and you got some problems around the team. I think Ron Rivera with the Washington football team. I mean, the Carson
Wentz, Commanders or whatever they're called now.
Or Washington Commanders. That's right. I forget. Carson Wentz is – what's a good word to describe Carson Wentz?
Box of
average.
Chocolates.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to get exactly. I think, I don't think the Washington football team is solid enough in all phases of the game to really be able to save Ron Rivera if Carson Wentz isn't the second year Carson Wentz that we saw where he was breaking 6 tackles and launching the ball down the field. I mean, it seems like, unfortunately, he's made of glass. And I don't think Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, I mean, they've got some names on that team, but it just doesn't really seem to me like a unit that is really going to be able to come together and win a significant enough amount of football games with Carson Wentz as their quarterback or whoever ends up being their quarterback when he inevitably goes down. So I think Ron Rivera's got a lot of work to do. I think Ron Rivera is a fantastic man outside of the game of football. I think he's a great football coach, but I don't know if he is going to be able to get this team to win enough games to be able to keep his job, because it's unfortunate for him, but I think it's more of the Redskins than it is Ron Rivera himself. But sometimes you just need a change, and I just don't know if the Washington Commanders are going to be able to make enough progress and do enough to really see what they have as the future. So I'm gonna say, unfortunately for Ron Rivera, he's a great guy. He's obviously gone through a lot in his personal life, but I'm not sure. He's got a lot of work to do going up into this upcoming season. Also, Kevin Stefanski, I think, is just a quick little shout out. I mean, this Deshaun Watson situation is we still have no. We thought we knew what was going on. We have no idea what's going on with this situation here. But obviously, Baker Mayfield is not going to be playing football for the Cleveland Browns. So if Deshaun Watson isn't, it's going to be quite an interesting season for them this year.
Jacoby Brissett under center.
I'll tell you what, Cleveland Browns fans, if there's any Cleveland Browns fans watching this, you're going to love the man on 3rd and 4th and 1. Other than that, not so much. But let's move on to, I think, our last segment of the show today. We've got, obviously, with the NFL season coming up, that means fantasy football's coming up. And, the biggest first-round player you're looking for is running backs. And I want to know, who's your favorite PPR running back this season going into draft day coming up?
I may surprise you a little bit with my answer. It's not Jonathan Taylor. It's DeAndre Swift.
Oh, no, Dylan, you took my answer. All right. Well, tell the people everything I was just about to tell them.
Well, one, Jared Goff can't throw the ball more than 3 yards downfield. So guess what? DeAndre Swift could get 6 to 8 balls a game. Secondly, I think the Detroit Lions have got a really fun, entertaining offense. I look at TJ Hawkinson, tight end, Jameson Williams, draft, and one of last year's fantasy darlings, Ahmad St. Brown. Is that what his name is?
Ross St. Brown.
Whatever his name is.
Yeah.
And then drafted and then signed my guy DJ Chalk in the offseason. And I really think DeAndre Swift can be a top 2 or 3 running back this year. I love his dual threat ability, brings plenty of upside on that fast artificial surface in Detroit. Plus, I feel like the Detroit Lions are not ready to contend this year. If they're behind a lot of games, guess what? That means Jared Goff will be throwing. And guess what? If he's throwing, he'll be throwing balls to DeAndre Swift. And if DeAndre Swift's catching balls, bingo!
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. I think DeAndre Swift is one of the most promising fantasy football running backs this year. I'm going to touch a little bit on this because there's a couple points I really wanted to play on this, but I do have another guy, so I'm going to try and make this quick. But DeAndre Swift, if you look at the majority of the RB1s from previous seasons, you're going to find guys on teams with an above average offensive line, a below average quarterback play, and not a whole lot of weapons on offense. I mean, you look at the Detroit Lions. Yes, they have TJ Hawkinson. Yes, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yes, they have DJ Chark, but there's not a guy there. TJ Hawkinson, I would probably say, would be the closest thing they have to that. But DeAndre Swift is the best player on that Detroit Lions offense. It's not even close. The offensive line, I don't know a whole lot about the Detroit Lions offensive line, to be honest. But I mean, another big factor I see with DeAndre Swift is some people call him injury prone. But if you look at his injuries, he had a concussion, he had a groin sprain, I believe he had a shoulder injury. It's not the hamstrings, it's not the quads, it's not the ankles, it's not the Achilles that you really see that really deteriorates running back.
Or the knee.
Or the knee, exactly. DeAndre Swift, I mean, if he can stay healthy, which I really do, like I just said, that those are kind of outside the box injuries that really don't have long-term effects on a running back's health. If he can stay healthy, I think he is definitely at least a top 5 running back. But another guy I want to touch on, just because you took my guy, I think Aaron Jones has the potential to have a monster fantasy football season this year. I mean, I saw the stat earlier today. I want to say that Aaron Jones, when Davante Adams was not playing, averages 29.3 fantasy points a game, which would be good enough for number 1 overall in fantasy football last season. Obviously, Davante Adams is no longer with the Green Bay Packers. He's with Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think Aaron Jones could be a very, very, will be a very massive part of that Green Bay Packers offense. It's Aaron Rodgers. You know they love throwing the ball. A.J. Dillon is there, yes, and A.J. Dillon will, unfortunately, I mean, if A.J. Dillon wasn't there, Aaron Jones would probably be a top 3 pick in fantasy football, in my opinion. But even with A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones is a great PPR receiving back. He's got a lot of potential, and he seems to be Aaron Rodgers' favorite target when Davante Adams was out or not playing. So I think Aaron Jones, the Green Bay Packers are very happy to have Aaron Rodgers back. Obviously, losing Davante Adams hurts them a lot. But having a running back like Aaron Jones, I think, is going to be we're going to see a big year from Aaron Jones this year, especially in PPR format.
You're right. You're right about Aaron Jones, because without Davante Adams, I mean, who's Aaron Rodgers going to go throw to himself? It might be the Aaron show.
Yeah.
Just
what's it? You're a football genius, I would say. Speaking of, just random trivia that popped in my head. Was it true? I believe it was. Speaking of Green Bay quarterbacks, Brett Favre, his very first completed pass
was to himself.
There we go. All right. I just thought I thought that was a football trivia that I had heard a long time ago, and I knew you would know the answer to that. So I'm glad we were able to loop that back in there.
Yeah, why can't we have Jan Patrick celebrity sports Jeopardy?
Yeah,
Now that'd be fun.
you're right.
So thanks for hopping on, Alex. Can't wait to start a divisional breakdown next week. Are you ready for your divisional knowledge breakdown and figuring out which teams are going to win and which teams will be in the summer?
Absolutely, man. We've gotten through free agency, we've gotten through the draft, we've got the NFL schedule release, and we're getting closer and we're getting closer. It's time to really break down. I'm excited. We're going to break down each division and really see what we've got coming for this upcoming season. I can't wait. Thank you for having me on again, Dylan. It's always a pleasure. I have a blast talking to you. And, Denzel.